Hello guys, it is me, the 90s Doggo, and I am back with another review. And just like the title says, this will be a review of the first Bayonetta from the perspective of a big Devil May Cry fan. I will be comparing this game with Devil May Cry and some other games in the hack and slash genre, since the entire reason why Bayonetta exists is as a response to the action games that were popular at the time, to compete and beat them at their own game. There is a lot that I enjoyed about this game, so I can see why it was so popular when it first came out, but there's a lot of it that has aged very poorly, which is why I don't think it is as good as Devil May Cry 4, the one that came at a similar time to this one. Don't get me wrong, Devil May Cry 4 has a lot of its own problems, but I don't think they're that bad for the most part. Bayonetta might have been more praised at the time for being more innovative with its far more exaggerated spectacle, but in the long run it turned out being a worse choice. But hey, don't worry Bayonetta fans, I can admit that for a first game in a franchise this is pretty great. Far better than the first Devil May Cry, that's for sure. Well, first let's start with the characters. Bayonetta herself, it is very fun to watch, and not just because she's sexy. Mostly because of her excellent voice actress, Elena Taylor.
Another one looking to line his pockets. I'm beginning to see why Enzo is so fond of you.
Real cute. But let's get one thing straight. Your fights are yours alone. I'm only here to watch my handiwork in action. So don't get any bright ideas about coming to me for help.
No, you get one thing straight. I'm not the slightest bit interested in the fact that you made these guns. If you get in my way, I will... How do the Americans put it? Oh yes, bust a cap in your ass.
But also because she follows a few of the checklists that also Dante fills. Of the super OP character that doesn't take almost any fight they are in seriously and constantly makes fun of their enemies. While also not feeling that she's just a female version of him, mostly because Dante leans more into the cool dude that makes silly jokes trope, while Bayonetta leans more into the sassy, seductive dominatrix British lady. And yes, as you have probably noticed, Bayonetta is incredibly sexy and absolutely mesmerizing to watch. But is that a bad thing because she's very sexualized and it objectifies women? No, not at all. If anything, I have heard from plenty of women that they find her to be quite empowering. Not only that, but Bayonetta is a witch who fights the forces of heaven while using a very seductive fighting style. I mean, the anti-religious message is not exactly subtle. So if you have a problem with Bayonetta showing off her body, then you are being just as prudish as the religious nutjobs that the game is criticizing. And since she's a witch, she has plenty of magical powers at her disposal that make her fighting style very entertaining to watch, both in gameplay and in the cutscenes. A good example of this is her torture attacks, but we will talk more about that later. Though I find it ironic that some people complain that Dante is too overpowered and nobody in the games stands a chance against him, when that's not true at all. Dante does get his ass kicked sometimes, especially by his rival Virgil, but Bayonetta actually has that problem and much worse. She's far more in control of every situation, her dexterity and capabilities are even more exaggerated than Dante. Oh, you thought that it was too over the top when Dante used a rocket to surf away in the air? Well, Bayonetta can grab a giant missile with her bare hands, then throw it away like it is nothing, then walks and gets into a fight over it. And Bayonetta never loses in a fight. The closest thing to see her lose is the constant stalemates that she gets with her rival Jan, but in their final battle Bayonetta defeats her anyways. Though we will talk more about that later. But to be fair, most video game characters tend to win a lot of fights, because video games are about beating a set of challenges. And if those challenges are mostly killing lots of enemies, and if the game is several hours long, by the end of the game you will have defeated literally hundreds of enemies. So to avoid making their main characters feel like a Mary Sue, sometimes the developers will make them lose in some cutscenes. But that can be frustrating for some players as they don't want to see their character lose while they get their control taken away from them. The difference is that characters like Dante and Bayonetta is that they are shown to easily defeat most of the enemies in the cutscenes. Even in the gameplay they seem very cocky and confident in the face of danger, while Nathan Drake kills as many enemies as them, but we see him struggle every step of the way, which makes him seem less overpowered. Even though, if you think about it, it is far more contrived than Nathan, who is a normal human, manages to kill hundreds of people, while Dante, the son of Sparda, manages to beat a lot of low-level demons. The reason why Dante and Bayonetta are shown to be so OP is because they are meant to be an extreme power fantasy. You are meant to feel as powerful as they are in the cutscenes when you are doing incredibly well in the game. And I think to make them work well, you have to show them a struggle or even lose against a few of their strongest opponents. Now let's talk about the other characters. Bayonetta has a surprisingly pretty good supporting cast, which are Enzo. He's the first character that you meet, and he's like a mix between Danny DeVito and Joe Pesci. He's hilarious and by far one of my favorite characters. So of course he barely appears in the game.
You can't guess what today is. Reading the good Lord's book ain't gonna do much. People have been waiting for this asshole to get whacked for ages. Please. Hell, look around. There's no love lost for old Humpty Dumpty.
Rodan. He's the next character that you meet besides Bayonetta. He's a pretty cool dude, and he will be your shopkeeper and weaponsmith of the game. He's just a very simple yet effective character that has a really badass presence all over him.
Cry at the sight of it. I'll just have to pop down to the tropics for a bit. So take a load off. All done. He's a little rude, but he makes up for it with charm. Be nice to him, okay?
Luca. He's very clumsy for some reason, and he mostly exists to constantly get rejected by Bayonetta, while she also goes all too soon around him. He reminds me of those protagonists from harem animes who are perverted yet lovable dorks. He's an okay character, but I think he would have worked better if they didn't make him so incompetent, since the game already had a pretty good comic relief character with Enzo.
Fate brought us here together, and it will never tear us apart.
Not only that, but there's something that I don't understand about him. For most of the game, he thinks that Bayonetta killed his father, yet he only acts mildly annoyed at her. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was under the impression that a literal witch that makes deals with devils had killed my father in front of me as a kid, I would probably be furious and scared of her. Cereza. This little girl serves as someone that needs to be protected by Bayonetta both in the cutscenes and in the gameplay. She is also a way for Bayonetta to start to open up to other people, so in that sense she works pretty well. But sadly her voice actress is not very good, which kinda limits the potential the character has. Also, 75% of her dialogue was just repeating the word mommy, which kinda gets annoying after a while.
If there's two things I hate in this world, it's cockroaches and crying babies. Well, a crying baby cockroach would be truly terrible. So don't you dare cry.
Yes, Mommy.
Bayonetta has a pretty good chemistry with all these characters, as their personalities bounce really well with each other. But there's a problem that comes from making Bayonetta so OP compared to the other characters. You see, most of the story you will expend it with Luca and Cereza, so she has to constantly babysit them and save them from danger. However, they don't want Luca to be completely useless all the time, so there is a point where Bayonetta is alone with Cereza, and then Cereza starts walking away a little. Then suddenly one of the main bosses appears and knocks back a car that will fall on Cereza, and for some reason Bayonetta just stands there, even though she's just a few meters away, and she just screams, "Little one!" Then Luca saves Cereza at the last moment. I get it, you wanted to give a cool moment for Luca, and to let him be more helpful, but it should come at the cost of making Bayonetta forget to use her abilities. I mean, during the whole game she shows that she's incredibly fast, she can dodge bullets, she's super strong, so she could have just kicked the car away. She can even slow down time when she wants. And she has such great aiming that she can shoot a bullet from great distance directly into a baby angel statue's dick hole. Oh yeah, that's a thing that happens in the game. Yeah, the humor of this franchise is very unique, very raunchy and shameless. It is definitely not for everyone, but at least I like it because of how absurd and crazy it can get. The story itself, it is not really much to write home about. It is just your typical person with amnesia plot where the main character is trying to recover its memories from its past, which to me doesn't seem to fit with the personality that they decided to give to Bayonetta. The bad guys keep telling Bayonetta a lot of cryptic stuff, that she is destined for something really bad, and make fun of her for not remembering anything, while a lot of the dialogue will be entertaining character interactions or just very clumsy exposition. But she will have to discover that she shouldn't let her past define her and focus more on the present and the friends she make along the way and blah blah blah, more generic anime stuff. The story is more of an excuse to put a lot of crazy characters in increasingly ridiculous situations while having fun interactions, with silly cheesy dialogue, in absurd fight scenes, and insane set pieces. The graphics of the game were impressive at the time, but haven't aged that well since it tries to be realistic, and most games that attempted that from that time have this same problem. However, I do like the stylized use of very hard dark shadows that gives the game almost a slight cel-shaded look, which makes them look much better than other games from that time like Devil May Cry 4. The music, it is very good. Most of these type of games use some type of rock or metal music to get you pumped for the battles. But in here they opted for a jazz for most of the battle themes, which fits with Bayonetta's personality. Since it is a very unusual music genre for this type of games, it makes Bayonetta very unique in the music department. The other type of music that you will hear a lot is heavenly classical angelic chorus for the boss battles, which fits them a lot too. I just wonder what the game would have been if it had used something more intense like a traditional hack and slash game. I know it will remove the game of its unique flair, but I still think it will be interesting to see gameplay of this game next to a heavy metal track. And now let's talk about the gameplay. Just like Bayonetta herself, where they wanted to make a character like Dante, but turn it up to 11, the same they did with the gameplay. But it also has some God of War influence here and there. The game is similar to other hack and slash games. You have your normal attacks that you can mix into different combos to attack enemies, which is very fun because of the amount of combos that you can do even from the start is absurd. So much that it might be too overwhelming for a newcomer, but I don't mind. And since there's a good variety of bad guys that the game throws at you, the main gameplay loop never gets too boring or repetitive. The rest of the time you might do a few simple puzzles. Nothing that will stress your mind too much, that's for sure. You also have a double jump to avoid attacks and to do some simple but creative platforming for a hack and slash. You can also turn into a panther to move faster or into a crow to fly, which is very satisfying for traversal. Also, a lot of new technique and accessories have to be purchased in the shop, which can be very useful in battles. So make sure to save money to buy a lot of them, since they are very expensive. You can also sometimes use your enemies' weapons. They usually are a lot slower but deal more damage than your regular weapons. So choose carefully when you want to pick them up. I recommend you to use them on slower enemies that can't avoid them easily. One thing that makes Bayonetta unique from other hack and slash games is her wicked whips attacks. These are very strong attacks where Bayonetta summons a powerful giant infernal demon using her hair as a conduit to do the final blow of her combo to finish off the enemy. The wicked whips sometimes will change depending on the current weapon that you have equipped. Since these attacks are so strong and have such a big hitbox, they're incredibly useful. So it might seem like the best strategy is just to make the combo as short as possible to activate the wicked whip quickly. And that might be the best choice sometimes. But you also must have in mind that the further you decide to activate the wicked whip attack to finish off the combo, the more powerful it will be. Usually it summons the limbs of the demon to do a punch or a kick or a stomp. The punches usually send the enemy flying back. The stomps squashes them into the ground. And the upper kick or uppercut punch will launch them high into the air to possibly do more air combos. Like in most of these games from that time, the camera follows your character and you can control it in a slightly clunky way. But it doesn't matter much because in battles most of the time you are going to use your lock-on targeting system to aim at the enemy. The stages are very short and mostly linear with a few detours that allow you to find secrets, like a few upgrades, items or halos, which are the in-game currency that you can spend in the store.
I guess I'm gonna have to set up shop here and score me some halos. These stupid rings are worth a fortune back home. Since it seems you're spoiling for a fight, if you come across any of these, bring them to me, and I'll hook you up.
At the end of every stage you get graded based on your performance. But unlike in Devil May Cry, in here the major factor will not be the score or the time that you took to beat the stage. It will be how much damage you took. In fact, you cannot get the highest grade if you get hit even once. Also, unlike Devil May Cry, your score and ranking will be far more punished for using recovery items, which I like. It really gives you a good reason to not try to abuse using them. Also, at the end of every stage, there will be a full minigame called Angel Attack. In here you will take a first-person view and you will have to manually aim and shoot some angels in front of you, with a very limited amount of ammo. Depending on what type of angels you kill, you will earn some points. And if you get enough, you can use them to exchange them for an item or some halos. Most of those items can be purchased in the store. Well, except the best one that you can get there, which is the blue witch heart, that will greatly increase your health bar, but only for the next stage that you decide to go. There is also the Alheim portals. These are special challenges that are hidden in the stages in which you have to clear a certain objective. Like you can only damage enemies in witch time, or you can only damage enemies with wicked whips, or you have a limited amount of kicks and punches to beat an enemy, or you have to beat a certain amount of enemies in a certain amount of time, etc. Some of these can be quite challenging, especially if you're not sure what is the right way to beat them while getting the highest ranking. The later ones tend to be by far the hardest, but after trying some times and thinking outside the box, you might figure out the trick to beat them in an easy way. If you manage to beat it, then you will be rewarded with an item like a broken witch heart. Collect 4 and your health bar will increase. Or you could get a moon pearl. Collect 4 and your magic gauge will increase. But the main ability of Bayonetta that makes her unique from the big boys in this genre is her special power to slow down everything around her that's called witch time. By dodging an attack at the last moment, you can activate this very powerful ability that will save you a lot of times. Despite that this ability might sound incredibly OP, the game still manages to be quite challenging. I played it on normal difficulty and it already gave me some trouble, so I bet it gets incredibly hard on other difficulties. The game does have different weapons, but you have to do specific tasks to get a special music record called Angelic Hymn called LP to unlock most of them. Some of them are very fun to use, others not so much, and some others are too similar to your starting weapon. Luckily, the main gameplay of the game it is so fun that you don't mind. Also, some of the weapons work better on your feet than in your hands. Oh yeah, that's a thing. This is another aspect that makes Bayonetta unique, is that you can choose to put weapons on her hands or her feet, allowing you to do a lot of creative combinations, but only on some of them. Here is a brief description of a few of the main weapons. Scarborough Fair. These are your starting weapons, and you get them right after finishing off the prologue. They are really big 4 handguns, 2 for Bayonetta's hands and 2 for her feet. These work as melee and long-range weapons, though the amount of damage that they can do isn't much compared to later weapons. But since it is a very simple, flexible and easy to use weapon, it is still a common choice for most players. Also, by holding one of the attack buttons you will do the charge modifier, where she will fire 5 shots before continuing the combo. This makes this weapon really useful to collect a lot of points on slower and weaker angels, or to deal damage from a safe distance without having to get closer to a more dangerous enemy. With this weapon you will summon a demon called Madama Butterfly for its wicked whips. This is the main demon that Bayonetta made a pact with to gain her support in battles. By the way, all weapons have a bullet climax ability that's unique for each weapon. With Scarborough Fair, this ability allows Bayonetta to spin around shooting at nearby enemies, with both her hand and feet guns. Here, the player will have to manually aim at the enemies around instead of using auto-aim with the lock-on. Onyx Roses. These are a pair of shotguns that work very similar to Scarborough Fair. They even share the same combos. but since they are shotguns, they have far shorter range, but they do a lot of damage. And its charge modifier will shot slow but strong bookshots that deal a lot of damage to nearby enemies compared to Scarborough or Fair. This can also be put in your hands or feet. Even its bullet climax works very similar to Scarborough Fair, but also with less range or far more damage. And its wicked whips are also the same. Shurava. This weapon is a really fast large katana that deals a decent amount of damage. It is probably the most well-rounded melee weapon in the game, and because of this it is one of the top favorites weapons of choice for most players. Its charge modifier is a very fast charged spinning slash attack that deals a lot of damage, and has a decent area of effect, but depending on how much you hold the charging. This one does have a unique type of wicked whiffs. Instead of doing punches or kicks from Madama Butterfly like with the previously mentioned weapons, this one will do very powerful and large spectral swords that do a lot of damage compared to the other type of wicked whiffs, which makes Shurava a top choice in boss battles for most players. Its bullet climax is a spin attack where the Shurava becomes far longer, and creates a cyclone of slashes doing decent damage to plenty of enemies around you. Durga. This set of gauntlets. Their most unique trait is the ability to change between two elements, which are fire and electricity with the bullet climax. The fire element is slow but powerful, which is useful against large enemies. The electricity is fast and has a lot of range, but it is a lot weaker. This makes Durga pretty much two different weapons in one. Its charge modifier changes depending on which element you're currently using. For fire it is a flame mine that explodes after a while or when an enemy touches it, dealing a lot of damage. And for electricity is a lightning explosion with far more range of attack. Its wicked whips are also Madame Butterfly's hands, but also with fire or lightning element depending on which one you're currently using. Don't forget to buy a lot of techniques in the stores, and some of them are really useful in battle, like the Flock of Bats dodge, or one of the best, which is the breakdance technique, because if you mix it with the Onyx Rose's weapon in your feet, you can stun locks the enemy Grace and Glory, which usually are very hard to deal with, but with this you will easily defeat them. Also, don't forget to buy the parry ability in the store. It works very similar to the parry in Metal Gear Rising. It will be very useful against many opponents in the game. And here comes the God of War influence. The game also has some finishers that you can do on enemies and bosses. In there you will have to do some quick time events. Sometimes it is a few button presses, or spinning the analog stick, or rapidly pressing one button to earn more points. And these are old school quick time events. So that means you will have to mash those buttons like crazy if you want to get the highest score. Not like those pussy modern games where you barely have to press the buttons a few times to win. Back in my day, quick time events were so punishing that you could break your fingers. But in all seriousness, having to stop the gameplay often to mash a button repeatedly and very fast can get very tiresome after a while. I just wish this game had taken lessons from Devil May Cry 4 instead of God of War in this aspect, because in that game, you do the finisher and you get to just watch the cool stuff happen, instead of just pressing a button in an attempt to make you feel like you're doing that action, but it's actually just annoying and tiresome. These finishers on regular enemies are called torture attacks, and they cost you a lot of your magic gauge. They usually insta-kill most of the smaller enemies. The ones that show a health bar will receive a lot of damage instead, but I think it is better to use them on those instead of wasting them on defeating just one weaker enemy. And yes, just like the takedowns in Sifu, the torture attacks also make every enemy around you stop to just look at how you're killing their ally. But I can forgive that the immersion break more in Bayonetta because of how silly the game is. However, I do like more the takedowns from Sifu since the torture attacks last for far longer, which means that they stop the flow of the gameplay for far more time. The finishers also work on bosses, and they are very bloody and silly, which fits the tone of the game. They even give the old God of War games that inspired them a run for their money, mostly because Bayonetta gets to summon a giant kaiju monster to help her beat the shit out of the bosses. But unlike the Wicked Weaves, where she only summons a limb at most of the demon, with this she summons the powerful and giant infernal demon completely in its full form. And she's still using her hair as a conduit. And her clothes are formed from hair, which means that to do these summons, she must get naked.
Bad boy.
With the bosses and some sub-bosses, the finisher will automatically activate when you hurt them enough without using any magic, which might make you think that your magic gouge is useless against them. But you can buy an ability with Rodan that allows you to automatically activate Witch Time when you get hit, but it will cost you some magic. There were some other abilities like that too, but I only bought the ones that I needed because most of them were too expensive. There is also insta-kill quick-time events in some cutscenes, which can be annoying because they do not happen as often as in a God of War game, which makes them very hard to predict, and you will probably fail them the first times you do them, because you are actually immersed in the gameplay and cutscenes, and then suddenly this pulls you right out of it. It is also very frustrating because the amount of times you die heavily affects how you're graded in each level. Oh, we got out of time again. I guess we will have to finish this one in part 2 as well. Okay, then that's all for today. Hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please remember to share, like and subscribe. See you later, guys!